Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. That's my name. Our next guests are the stars of the upcoming Disney Plus streaming film Togo. And in it, Willem Dafoe plays Leonhard Seppala, a sled dog breeder and musher tasked with leading the 1925 serum run with his dog, Togo. Julianne Nicholson co-stars as Constance Seppala, Leonhard's wife and partner in raising Togo from a young pup. Let's take a look at the trailer for the Disney Plus streaming film Togo.
Intelligence, stamina, courage, and heart.
Run, puppy! Run!
My business is dogs.
He's undersized.
He's trouble.
Well, good afternoon.
He's untrainable.
Stop that! Ah!
What does he bring to the breed?
The heart of a survivor.
He outran every single one of them.
He's not a sled dog. He's a lead dog.
What we have in our children is an epidemic. It's a death sentence.
They found a cure.
Round trip is 600 miles. You see that storm on the horizon? Only one man and one dog can make that run.
He's 12 years old. He's too old. He'll never make that distance.
Got one more in you, pup.
My guess is we don't find him till the thaw.
All right, Togo. Time for us to find out who we are.
I always thought he lived for the sled. When all along, what he lived for was me.
Everybody, please welcome from Togo, Willem Dafoe and Julianne Nicholson. Let's hear it. Hey, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on this beautiful film. You two are actors that I love. I love having you here for interviews, but I also know when you're in something, by and large, it's going to be good. You have great taste. You choose great projects, and there's sled dog movies that have been made before. I'm curious how you knew going into this that this would be a cut above the rest. Is it a conversation with the director? Is it the script itself? Is it what gives you a sense that when you come out of this experience, which is going to be really difficult to shoot, you're going to be in the mountains, that you are going to be making something that, isn't just another sled dog movie, which it is not?
Willem Dafoe. For me, Willem was already attached. I loved the story. I loved that it felt like the representation of this couple felt like pretty even, which you don't often see, especially in stories set in 1913 and 1925. And talking to the director, who was a cinematographer and wilderness guide and lover of dogs, had a wolf for many years, it seemed, for me, there was enough things, but for me, Willem was number one.
All those things, except for substitute.
Except he never heard my name.
No, that's not true. That's not true. No, I had a wonderful time with Julianne. Erickson was very key. The script was good, but I always feel like, you got to talk to the people that are going to execute it. Otherwise, the best script in the world, if you can't execute it, go home. Go home. And I knew, he had a deep feeling for the dog part of the story. He knows nature, has a deep feeling for that. He was incredibly sincere, and I knew he knew how to shoot action stuff because I had seen his work. Really fantastic action outdoor photographer, and he had a passion about the project that sucked me in. And I knew we were going to be shooting in the Canadian Rockies, There was going to be very little CGI, but there were going to be really fantastic action sequences. So all that was really appealing.
It appeals to you to do action sequences in the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah,
At this
why
point in your
not?
life,
Why
you're like,
not?
let's go.
Well, also, I would have to learn, at something like At Eternity's Gate, you can't do it unless you're up for painting. For this, you can't do it unless you're up for learning how to be a musher, a dog sled guy. And I've never had a dog in my life. I've never had a pet in my life. No, I came from a big family, and there were enough of us, to deal with. And it was chaos. So, and then as I was out on my own as an adult, I was either struggling or traveling a lot in work, so it never worked out. So this really deepened my love for animals, and also learning the mushing was really interesting.
What was that process like, learning the mushing?
Just, copying, having the people that do that for a living, and just learning how they deal with the animals, how the animals deal with them. It's basically quite simple, but there's a lot of finessing as far as balance, and also your relationship with the animals is very important, and understanding the animals is very important. So it's a pretty deep dive, although when you look at dog sledding, it looks quite simple. It looks like the guy's just back there riding along. But you're watching things, you're trying to keep tension, you're watching the dogs, you got to watch the terrain, and if you crash, don't let go. That's one of the first things I learned, which was a very hard lesson, because those dogs love running so much that they'll just take off.
They'll keep going?
Yeah.
Did you crash?
Oh, yeah.
And you let go?
No.
Oh, you didn't? You knew
No.
upon first
that
crash?
That was a
not
huge
to-
bonding experience for the guys that were training me, because they thought, he's okay. He's okay. He doesn't let go.
I want to go back to something that you said about the passion of the filmmaker, because both of you have worked with, and more recently as well, with you in the mountains as well in South America, with incredibly passionate filmmakers, and how, to make a movie, whether it's an action sequence or a small independent film, it requires always going an extra step. Knowing that your sequence or whatever you're shooting requires to shoot just a little more and push just a little bit beyond probably a comfort zone of some kind. When you're going to go shoot something, when you're looking for someone that can execute it, is that what you're looking for? Someone that is going to push for everything to get all of the footage, get everything he requires for the movie to be good in the end?
I think you said it, really. Erickson was relentless.
Yeah.
It wasn't... We were working in temperatures sometimes. One day, the union wouldn't let us work because it was something like, 40 below 0 centigrade. Sometimes we were working at 8,000 feet. Sometimes we'd be traveling four hours up to get to a location, and we'd only have 3 or 4 hours of shooting before we'd have to go out down the mountain before it was dangerous. So there were real challenges. It was an expedition, and even more down on level ground where we were, where our house was, we were always very much dependent on weather, which was quite extreme. And it tests people, because you have to be flexible and you have to be ready for anything.
But I feel like even in the scenes just between the two of you down on ground level, there's a focus on performance and a focus on story that goes a long way as well.
Julianne's great. She's one of the best partners I ever had.
Really?
We had such a good time. And,
I believe it.
No, we had
So
such a good time, and, our bed in that little house was the best bed in the world as far as I was concerned. It was so cozy, because we aren't shooting on sets. We've built these places on location. So it was really our place, and we really spent enough time there that it got to be a place of comfort. And it's cold, so, you had to warm it up.
Julianne, your character is sort of the first to fall for Togo in his early years. How many dogs were there at that time? And did you fall for those dogs as well?
There were a lot of dogs around all the time, and I don't consider myself necessarily a dog person, but I do think puppies are undeniable.
Yeah, you have to be evil.
It's like, something's, you need to be checked out if you don't love a puppy. So
You don't love puppy. I feel like you're.
well, something's
I love
wrong.
puppies. What did I say?
Speaks deeply to
I
who
thought I
Willem
saw in
is.
my periphery going, I don't know.
No, what I was going to say something about what we were just talking about, which is something else that was so beautiful about this experience was that for the most part, it was really just Willem and I and the dogs and the intimacy that comes with when there's not all that extra energy of just other people in and out of trailers and needs and demands and just, energy. And the place that we were filming, it was this tiny little beautiful cabin that they built for us. So it really did feel like, and something happened where we got a snowstorm on like October 2nd, which wildly messed up the schedule because we have some, we needed some, we wanted to shoot throughout the year. So we need some footage where there's no snow on the ground, where it's fall, where it's warm. And so that completely threw a wrench in the works. But it also had us like in that cozy bed, like on week 1, which I think went a long way to informing their relationship. And so we could bring that into, which wouldn't have happened, I don't think, until the end of the film if we were going to go by the regular
It's true.
the first schedule.
Yeah, it's very true. That was a lucky accident.
Yeah.
Lucky accident that we had to flip stuff much later in the story early. So we had our most intimate and most probably challenging scenes first. And that really created the bond that for all the other action sequences and the smallest connecting pieces, we already had a relationship. Where if it would have been the other way, maybe we wouldn't had the scenes to establish the relationship earlier in the story.
How big was the crew on this? Like, how many people can you take up a mountain or keep in these small locations that you've just built?
There are mountain safety people. We're given instruction and we're giving, what do you call it? Things so they can trace us in case there's an avalanche. We're given avalanche training. So there are extra people that you don't have normally on a movie. Safety people. You've got a lot of transportation, like to get to one location. You had to take one, you'd get driven to a base camp, then you'd take one kind of snowmobile up maybe for 20 minutes, then you'd get off and you'd have to have a different kind of snowmobile because of rules about how we treated the environment. And this was like a straight shot up. It was really
And the
crazy.
whole crew was going up like that? Wow.
Yeah. And it was, so when you actually get up on the mountain, you're quite small because you don't want the crew in the way. You've got safety people, you got mountain people, you got camera people, you got people going up and down. It wasn't huge. It was small because Erickson also is the DP, so it's a very tight group, and it's also there's not a lot of cast, and you have the animal people. And, if anybody's worried about animals being mistreated on this movie, let me tell you, they were treated better than we were.
They had trailers.
You know it. It's like, he doesn't want to work today. It's like,
Well, I tell this story where we were shooting one of these scenes where we happen to have a sunny day, and I have pretty fair skin. I have to be careful that And anyway, so I'm standing there and we're setting up the shot, and the puppy's next to me, and we're waiting, and it takes 20 minutes, half an hour every time you're changing shots, and someone comes running out with an umbrella. I'm like, look at this. These people are so sweet. They put it over the puppy, and I'm standing there like my basal cell carcinoma is like coming out. It's like, oh no, it's good. I'm sure I'm fine. So yeah, they're well loved and well taken care of, these dogs.
What was it like working with a director who was also your DP and is primarily prior to this an action photographer or a nature photographer? How was he with you guys as actors, or was he kind of like, you guys are great, you know how to do this, I'm just going to figure out how to shoot what you know how to do?
he was sweet. I mean, he's very sensitive. Very sensitive. So he, very gentle. I mean, he deals with people in a very sweet way. I think if we didn't have a good setup, and I think if there wasn't good chemistry and good faith between us, I don't know, because he had a light touch. He didn't beat us up on anything, but he was wearing lots of hats. And I can only say that he gave us room to do the things that were on the page and gave us beautiful challenges, and really took care. He's a very kind guy, and I think that was part of the that was essential for the approach of this material. He was very clear that we didn't want to anthropomorphize the dogs too much, didn't want to make it saccharine. We know this is a film that's going to appeal to, it's really designed for pretty much anybody to see it. So you're aware of that, but he also wanted the edge of nature, and he wanted part of the cruelty of nature, and, he didn't want it to be sugary, but at the same, and as he approached that balance, he was very, very, very careful.
Do you want to speak to?
I would just echo what Willem said, and he actually had a lot of difficulty to deal with between the crazy weather we had last year, having tons of snow when we didn't want it, and then no snow when we needed it, and the dogs and the conditions and the travel, and he just had such a positive attitude that it kept the mood on set always very friendly. And I think he loved, because he's done so much, action and sort of big natural photography, I think he was very excited to work on relationship stuff. And I think it felt like a
That's
collaboration. But he also was not precious about like getting his feelings hurt. He wanted it to be the best. And so he was wonderful.
Also, I got to give a shout out to the Canadian crew, because this was like an expedition. These guys were...
They're out for 14 hours outside.
They were so tough, and no complaints. They were very, very motivated, and you need that. And I think that was important, because he has to lead them. Because everybody complains. Some actors like to complain about how tough the shooting conditions were.
Everybody likes to complain on a set. Everybody likes to complain on a set.
But this was tough, but there was a spirit of adventure. And the Canadian crew, because it was a Calgary-based crew for the most part, there were some Americans in there as well. They were used to shooting in these conditions, so they were like, it was
a day at the office.
Yeah. They were great.
You mentioned that you sort of went to great lengths to not anthropomorphize the animals and the dogs, and it's true, the movie doesn't do that. I think in a lesser movie there would be sort of like longer conversations with the dog, and the dog would kind of like look at you for a little while, which this movie doesn't do. When you were on set, was there ever talk of doing that, or was there just sort of like, let's stay as far away from that as possible?
I think in the script, sometimes to tell the story, some of that creeps in. It's the most natural thing in the world, because if you're having a scene with a human and a dog, that's going to creep in. But we identified that, and also the writer, who, by the way, is just nominated for a WGA award. Did you know that? Oh. Yeah.
For Togo?
For Togo.
Oh, fantastic.
For Togo, yeah. He was totally, he was very understanding of taking those things out, because on one stage you're just trying to tell the story, and then when you get down to it, you got to find out what the conventions are that really get in the way of realizing it. Sometimes you can't take the script literally.
Do you do that is the writer there with you guys on set, and you were figuring that out?
He was there in key periods. And so much of the movie is action stuff. It's not text heavy. So that was the bulk of the work. But yes, the writer was around, and he was very open to changes and working with our input.
There was very little ego on this film, which is not always the case, and really helpful towards trying to make the best thing possible.
Yeah, sometimes ego, like one person at the top, can drive something in a good way. Oftentimes, not at all. More often, not at all. I think, right?
Which is time to talk about. Now it's time to talk about the dogs.
They had the most ego.
You know, it was interesting because I gotta say it, we're leaving something behind, right? It was interesting that a lot of the action sequences were using the dogs that are used to doing this. That's what they do. They're trained for it. That's what they do. And then that was supplemented by Hollywood dogs. And to fold the two in with each other was very interesting.
What do you mean Hollywood dogs?
A dog that came from Atlanta film.
Yeah, wants a latte.
Film
Imagine
animals.
a Hollywood dog's like a child actor of some kind, where they
bit.
bark in a sing-songy way. Or
we
something.
had to be patient.
Really?
Yeah, because you can teach a dog behaviors, but then the set is very chaotic. There's lots of noise. There's lots of distraction. You know, you really have to finesse it, and that becomes an exercise for me, particularly in you, for dealing with the dogs to just wait and really take your cues off of them, because you can't force them. You've got to let them be dogs. Even though they're trained, that training goes away very quickly when you're in a volatile situation. So you have to be very, you know, it's a difficult partner to have, but it's really rewarding in a funny way, because you have to find the place of receptivity that can accept the fact that they aren't going to do the same thing all the time, or they're unpredictable. And you know, you gotta use some tricks sometimes.
You also have to be on the go, right? I mean, you have to be as patient as you are. You have to be ready to go when they're ready to go, which is a huge. I mean, that is.
Then we get the sled dogs,
but that's a
which are beautiful. They're like incredible athletes, and at the root of the story is this really difficult journey. And what these dogs do is incredible. What they do naturally, what is bred into their being. When you hook them up to the sled, the energy that they have, the enthusiasm they have, is just incredible, and the power they have. And they love to run. They love to run. It's really something. You know, it's like you get a chance to put your finger on, you know, something in nature that's quite pure.
Did you find that having that patience, waiting for the dogs, and then having to be on the go as soon as they were ready, takes a lot of the preciousness away from the craft itself while you're working?
Everything becomes practical, but I'm down with that on any movie set.
Really?
Because I think that tells you what has to be done, you know, and then you apply yourself to practical things, and you have an experience, and something happens, and that becomes the heart of the willful pretending under another circumstance. You know, you're taking on someone else's situation. Rather than anticipating what that experience is, the way that you really experience it in a clean way is to problem solve. Be there with her, be there with the dogs, be there with the house. And it's all incredibly practical. I mean, you hear actors say it all the time. The simple stuff is the hardest to do.
Really?
Yeah.
We have time for a couple questions from the audience. Who's the question? Right here. Hi.
Hi, my name is Gloria Jules. My question is for Mr. Dafoe. Platoon was such an amazing movie, and so was Spider-Man. So my question for you is, what inspired you to become an actor?
Hard to say, because there's not one moment where you decide. Because for some professions, you go to school, you say, okay, I want to be an architect, and then you get on a career path that makes you study for that. I always loved making things. I always loved performing. Even as a young kid, I was writing plays, but I did other things too. I did sports. I was a regular kid. I grew up in the Midwest. I didn't know anybody that made their living as an actor or an artist of any kind. So it's hard to say, because I never trained. I went towards situations and people that excited me, and then after doing it for a while, I thought, wow, I guess I'm an actor.
Did you start training then? I mean...
Training by doing. I mean,
yeah.
I went to university for 3 semesters in like an acting program, but that didn't really stick. I mean, I didn't continue to graduation. I started working with a small company in the Midwest. And then for many years I worked in the theater, and then people saw me at the theater and asked me to do movies. And I still do theater. But so to answer your question, I gave you the background just to give the sense that there wasn't one moment, you know? What made me be an actor? I don't know. Because it was a very fluid thing. It's like...
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
You got work.
Yeah, we're going. We keep going.
But the theater that you started with was fairly experimental, right? Yeah. The Worcester Group.
Which was great training, for film.
Yeah.
Because of that practicality. The one thing, I learned many things there. It really shaped me as an actor, being at the Worcester Group for 27 years, a small company downtown that still exists. Probably the principal thing I learned was, you know, the technicians were like actors and the actors were like technicians. It was a very, you know, egalitarian approach to things, and also everything was very practical. It was about, for me, it was about the quality of being there, the quality of how you do things. It wasn't some grand show. It wasn't some showing. It wasn't some interpreting. It was inhabiting and trying to find a kind of engagement, a kind of grace, you know, in your actions and what you were doing that was resonant and changed you.
Jen, what made you become an actress?
That happened.
Yeah.
Same thing. I guess I did when I was when I was in elementary school, in like 2nd and 3rd grade. I went to school for this one school for a couple of years, and they did actual like good plays for that age group, you know, the under 8 set. But it was actually like, it was really fun, and I enjoyed it. And then I didn't do it. I auditioned for my high school play where they were just starting a drama club, I think when I was a junior in high school, and I didn't get a role. I auditioned and they offered me stage manager. So then I put that down for a while.
And it wasn't Our Town, right? It was actual stage manager.
Yeah, exactly.
What was
it
the
wasn't
play?
the role. I don't remember. It was too painful. I got to put that away somewhere. It's deep down. And then it was an unnamed thing. I just thought it was something that I wanted to do. And then sort of when I found a teacher that where her way in made sense to me, then it all sort of fell into place.
Can I ask what that way in was, or a brief summation of what that way in was?
It's different now because it becomes something else as you get experience and as you discover as on the job. But for me, it was using your own experiences, and so I guess it's not method exactly, but just taking stuff from your own life and putting it onto what was happening in any given scene. The first day I was in the class, she put an empty chair in front of me and said, "Put your mom in that chair." And then there was all these little exercises around, and I was sort of knocked out by what that could do for me.
One more.
Hello. Hi. While reading the script, what was the moment for you that made you realize you had to be a part of this film?
For me, it was the overall story. It was the whole story. As I said before, knowing that Willem was a part of it was a huge appeal because I've been a fan of his for so many years that it was to be able to work with him, I thought would be a dream, and it was.
Thank you. You're sweet. I'm embarrassed.
Not really. And I just loved the portrayal mostly of this couple. Actually, I loved learning about this true story that sort of a different story had been sold to us, which is the story of Balto, who has the statue in Central Park. Though in 2011, Time magazine voted Togo most heroic animal of all time. So Togo's getting his story told finally. But for me, it was this relationship that I thought was really lovely and one I don't often see.
When you say don't often see, you started by saying that they were equals in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I feel like it's a real partnership. Where they live, it's like you can't just be, folding the clothes and like making dinner. She's like fixing the roof. She's chopping the wood. She's keeping this place going while her husband is away a lot.
Also, she's the wise one because she can see in Togo a potential where I'm more tight, I'm more pragmatic, I'm not that generous, I'm not that forward thinking.
Sort of set in his ways.
Yeah, set in his ways, but you see why he is.
Yeah.
And ultimately he identifies with Togo because he's had his setbacks in his life. But the relationship was really key because it was like people are trying to are very conscious of giving women better roles. Well, this kind of naturally, this is a good woman's role. It's not stacked high. It's kind of practical and has a real, it's credible, these women that were in these frontier worlds, it was tough. It was tough. They had to be tough and strong, and sometimes stronger than the men. The other thing that was cool about this was the dilemma, the basic dilemma of this trip, that it may kill this dog, but it's what the dog does. So it kind of puts you in touch with how people dedicate their lives to a way of being. And yes, it's colored by service, but it's something that's hardwired in our nature about to try to find meaning in a life. And I think that's moving because it's a predicament we all have, giving our lives meaning. And this is a very concrete way to not only see her trying to do that, my character trying to find that, and also the dog as well.
The idea of meaning finding meaning in your life, forgive me for going too deep, potentially, but what is it like as an actor to find meaning consistently in other lives? And does that give you meaning? Does the meaning that you find in other lives consistently in the work give you yourself meaning? Too much? Sorry.
No, it's a good question. I feel like, it's not just about storytelling. It's about having experiences and having them be transparent and suggesting to the people watching other ways of looking at their lives, to challenge. We're all oppressed by our idea that things have to be a certain way. And we, particularly in the modern world, we have lots of fear and lots of places where can't go there. I got to do this. We got to be free from that. And the way we got to be free from that and really realize what's great about life and great about having this human life is you've got to be free of that lockstep. So sometimes looking at other people's lives, that can be a shakedown, what we take as givens. The must-be's, or I should have, or I have to, in life can be challenged. And I think anytime you look at another story, it kind of widens, makes your heart and your brain more flexible because it's not about you and you find your connection to other people and find the other possible ways to live.
Absolutely.
Wow, you really made me go down there.
I like that. I find that, I think you get to find that as an actor in traveling, in the characters, but then also I find that when I read a great book, read an incredible book, you feel that openness and that connection to something completely outside of yourself,
That's it. I think, we need a helping hand. To get through this life, and sometimes it's from someone we don't know.
Do you want to take a shot at that question, or do we?
Clean it up for me.
I think
you did pretty good.
I think you did
barely
beautifully
articulate.
there. These are some of the little gems that I would get from Willem as we go. Every time I leave him, I feel like I've learned something. No, I would agree with that. Just sort of introducing people to other walks of life, other experiences outside their own it can be a powerful thing, and to be a part of that feels good.
Togo is coming to Disney Plus. When can people check it out on Disney Plus?
December 20th.
December 20th, and it's a beautiful film with two of my favorite performers at the center of it, and some incredible dogs. Everybody give a huge round of applause for Willem and Julianne. Let's hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.